Welcome, and welcome to our officer colleagues, our colleagues from KPMG, and our councillors who are sat this end. We were just talking that you can sit anywhere you like in this meeting. You don't have to behave like we do upstairs. We can intermingle with the officers, and the officers can intermingle with us. I know they won't like that.
Well, our constitution says we're not allowed to fraternise.
Yeah, but I think we can get away with it. Actually.
Well,
yeah. And I would also like to thank you, Richard, for stepping into the breach for me last time. And I understand your skills and powers of chairmanship are fantastic. In fact, I'm thinking of handing the baton straight over. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I think we have apologies from Fabienne and anyone else, and we're only waiting for John.
No, received apologies from the
Oh, have we? Okay, so we're all here then. So ready and raring to go. So I think my first task, colleagues, is to ask you to confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the last meeting. If you're all happy that they are a true and accurate record of the meeting, I'd be very happy to sign them on your behalf. Richard, as you were the chair?
Yes, sir. Yeah. From my recollection, they certainly appear to be. They appear to be fine. Unless anyone else noted anything incredibly wrong or contrary to what happened.
No, I also raised a point about having a vice chair.
Oh yeah.
To get on the agenda, so
Yeah.
we'll shortly deal with that. So
They've not been notified of any corrections from the chairman.
super. So we'll assume they're good to go. There you are. Thank you. And how do we deal with matters of order? Just in case we don't. All right, we don't deal with matters of order. That's good then. We'll crack on. And we've done apologies for answers. Are there any members who need to declare an interest in the agenda items of tonight's meeting? Take that as a no then. The next item is the appointment of a vice chairman. I will say I've not lobbied or counselled any individual to step forward, but I would seek one of you, even though it's not constitutionally required, as the vice chairman of council. So are there any nominees for someone?
I propose Councillor Ockridge.
And Kevin, were you suggesting the same?
Who's that?
Councillor
Richard? Richard, yes, absolutely. What a good idea.
So, proposed and seconded?
Richard, no, this it was stunningly good.
It was stunning. Excellent, that's three. I think we've got a unanimous decision on the nomination. Congratulations.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. Mostly you'll just have to do what you're doing tonight.
Yeah. No.
Hopefully we'll be all right.
All right, thank you.
We then move swiftly on to agenda item 5, which is a report reference CG 1309-161. I do not know whether the chairman of the council reads out the numbers, so I'll carry on with that. So this is actually incorporates the report from our colleagues at KPMG, and shall we let our colleagues introduce their report, go through it, and then we can ask a number of questions before I invite Audra to present her report and the recommendations and advice to council members. Will that be okay? Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Right, so we will just run through the report. My name is John Gorry. I'm the director from KPMG responsible for the audit. I'm joined by Adrian, who manages the audit. So we'll both say a little bit to the report as we go. I just wanted to kick off just to remind you that this, and say starting at page 4, it's got a sort of summary of what the report's about. This is the main report that we do as part of our audit. It's really the summary of our work, and therefore it's got all the important messages that we have for you. What page 4 does is remind you that there's really two main elements to the audit. There's both the financial statement audit, which is the opinion on the accounts, and also a value for money conclusion. And we'll say a little bit more about each of those in turn. Moving on to the headline section, I'm not actually going to go through that in that much detail because we're going to go through it all actually in the body of the report. The only bits I'd pull out is just the headline message, which is that we are intending to provide unqualified opinions on both the financial statements and the VFM conclusion. So that's the most important message. There is, this is part of a process, so there's still some more work for us to go. There's a little bit of certain assurances that we have to get, and completion of the review. There's a letter of reference as part of this process tonight. So, if you like, this actual meeting is part of our audit because we are required under auditing standards to report along these lines to those charged with governance, which is yourselves. So it's an important step in our process, is I suppose what I'm trying to say. But on that, I will pass over to Adrian to talk about section 3 on the financial statements, and then I'll come back in at value for money.
So, first of all, on our report, page 9, which is on page 17 in your pack, we are saying there that confirming the materiality level that we work to in our audit work. We've said in the headlines we didn't find any material misstatements in the accounts this year, which is I think not what we've been able to see in previous years, so that's obviously a good reflection on the officers who prepared the accounts. Section 3, page 10 of our report is headed Significant Audit Risks. There are 2 items there: management override of controls and fraud risk of revenue recognition. Now those are 2 risks that are standard, and you'll see them in any audit, whether it's public sector or private sector, and we are required to address those by auditing standards. In terms of management override of controls, the main way we address that is by looking at the process over the control of journal entries that officers make, and we made a recommendation about that later on in the report. Although I have to say there were, in terms of the journals we examined during the year, there was nothing wrong that we found with any of those journals. The fraud risk of revenue recognition, we don't consider that is a specific risk for local government bodies because of the nature of your income and the sources of your income. Nevertheless, we are required to consider it as part of our process. On our page 19, we mention another area of audit focus, which is investment properties, and I'll say a bit more about that when we come to look at the section later on about the other items that we've considered. And in fact, I will jump straight on to our page 14. And there are the two headings I want to draw your attention to. One is group accounts, the other is prior period adjustment. And I'll do it in reverse order. The prior period adjustment related to the Rainsbrook crematorium. Now this was one particular investment property that was classified as an investment property in your accounts last year. As part of our national quality review procedure, we were sort of asked to look at that again as to whether the classification was correct. And we had long discussions with the officers about that. We came to the conclusion on the joint agreement that the property needed to be moved and reclassified on your balance sheet. Now the overall impact of that is that your overall long-term assets changed by just £46,000, and the value of your unusable reserves changed by a corresponding amount of £46,000. So not a significant impact in the accounts. And as part of that exercise, we also looked a little bit wider at the other investment properties classified in your accounts, which was the other area of audit focus. And we looked at a sample of those to satisfy ourselves that they were reasonably classified, and we came to the conclusion that they are indeed fairly classified as investment properties. So the issue there is just related to the one property, the Rainsbrook crematorium. The other item on that page, our page 14, is group accounts. And last year, if you looked at the accounts last year, you'd have seen a whole section on group accounts, which include not just Daventry District Council, but also the Daventry Estate Company Limited, which is a subsidiary of the council. This year, again, we had some very long and frank discussions with Audra as to whether group accounts were required. Audra was quite firmly of the opinion that they were not required, and our judgment is that we agree with that position. There are various aspects to take into account. One is the materiality, again, not just in terms of numbers, but also in terms of the understanding of a reader of the accounts. If you put pages and pages in explaining a group position, does it really add anything to the accounts? Does it add anything to the understanding of a reader of the accounts? And that was one of the main bases that we both agreed that it would not add anything. So we agreed that there was no need to put in group accounts this year, and indeed going forward, because of the sort of static position of the subsidiary company now. Third item on that page 14 is a narrative statement. This is a new statement this year. It replaces the old explanatory foreword, but it's more expansive than that and includes more, particularly it's more of a forward-looking document. And we're quite happy with what we've seen in terms of the content of that statement, given that it's the first year. It's a good effort. I think that's probably about as good as you'll get from this. I wanted then to turn on to the value for money section, which is...
Do you want to pause there?
Yes.
Yes,
Let colleagues ask any questions they have on the first section up to page 15. So you can ask anything to Kevin.
One of the first things you said was the materiality set at 500k.
Yeah.
Could you just explain that to me? Because $500,000's fairly material to me.
Okay. The purpose of an audit is to give an opinion as to whether the accounts give a true and fair view. An auditor will not say that the accounts are correct. So materiality is a standard concept that auditors apply. It's our judgment as to what that level of materiality should be. We link it to the level of your gross expenditure. So that 500,000 is somewhere in between sort of 1 and 2% of the total gross expenditure of this council. If we find an error that's above 500,000, we would be having, we'd pretty much be saying you need to adjust the accounts. Now, we haven't found any errors of that magnitude. We have a much smaller threshold, which is, I think it's £25,000 this year. If we find an error above that amount, we will discuss it with officers and say, we'd like you to adjust it, please. So although that's a headline number, if we find anything that needs adjusting, we do work to a much sort of lower level.
Yeah, I take from behind behind your question, I take it, is it just a sort of blanket, we're only looking at things above 500,000, and I suppose how materiality used is it's a technical thing that we use to help us plan and so on. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't look at items below that level, and obviously testing does cover areas below that level, and indeed a lot of the things that we find are below that level.
So it wouldn't be uncommon then in other councils, district councils, to have that same sort of figure?
A lot higher.
A lot higher. So it's slightly different to business though.
I mean, one of the things that we could say is that it's come down from previous years. So actually, if you looked at the report we did last year, you would see it was actually set at a higher level, and that's one of the things that we've actually been, if you like, reflecting on that and bringing the level down. So, it has actually been higher in previous years and has come down. It's an absolutely good question, and I think quite a common one, because it always does seem a large amount.
Yes.
But you're saying in practice and operationally, you you highlight
About
different sheets
smaller.
of small.
And the testing would cover smaller.
Then why set it at
What it
500?
does, it helps us. It does help us plan in terms of. It might, for example, help us determine how big a sample we would look at within a population, because you can look at what sort of error you might want to find in any population in statistical sampling, for example. So it does help shape our plan. And the other main point, as Adrian made, is about how do we report and what do we argue about with officers on. It helps set those boundaries. So, there's, there are those levels above which, if it's, that we're saying it's sufficiently wrong for us to say we can't sign true and fair.
Right. But you're saying you challenge at lower levels anyway?
Absolutely. And normally those are agreed by officers to be amended. But, there are cases in authorities where we might argue over something and we would agree not to adjust, and if it's below that number, then we would just report that as unadjusted. And we have done that in in earlier years.
What is it as a percentage of turnover?
1.4.
Somewhere between the two.
So, materiality has been at 2%.
Any other questions on the first section?
Yes. Two questions, but the same sort of question really, about two different things. Firstly, the crematorium, and secondly, the subsidiary company, Daventry Estates. I accept you haven't done group accounts. When I was doing it, I never liked producing group accounts either, so that's fine. How are they reflected in the accounts of the council, those two entities?
The TDECL ones, the Daventry Estate Company Limited, we call it TDECL for short, apologies there. Obviously the transactions that go in and out, and they're amalgamated in with our accounts, so they are in there, just all part of our reporting lines and our balance sheets too. So without showing what ours is, what theirs is in the aggregate, they're all in our accounts already.
But there's also a note that talks about it in more detail, that explains what some of those transactions are, and that's what we wanted to do, if you like, trying to think of the reader of the accounts, this mythical ideal reader of the accounts. What would it be fair to try and show them about what it meant that didn't include having a full set of
I've never met anyone yet who did read the accounts.
Yeah, well,
That's why that's the supplementary question on Richard's before we move to the second part. Where in the accounts does it show that the Daventry Estates is a wholly owned subsidiary of the council? Because in my reading of it, I obviously missed it if it's there, but I would have expected us to show those companies that we own at 100% level. And I may have just missed it, and if I have, I'm sure Adrian will point it out very quickly.
Will we pay note 33 on page 61 of the papers?
Does it appear on the balance sheet? On the balance sheet? No, there is a note.
It actually says on page 61, where it's headed up group accounts. Last year the council produced group accounts for the authority and its wholly owned subsidiary, Daventry Estate Company Limited.
Does Daventry Estate Company have a value?
Is this page 61?
Yes.
Where's the value of the account?
Of the
Companies. Presumably it's on the balance sheet somewhere. It says
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that note, it goes on to say, the value of the assets in the company's accounts is 7 million.
So you've got the individual assets in the balance sheet rather than the company itself.
Yes, yes. All when you do the group accounts, you actually amalgamate the different lines of reporting. So, like for instance, the assets or all the creditors and everything else just show us.
Okay, and then the same question in relation to the crematorium. Is that future?
The crematorium, exactly as if we were running it. So on the balance sheet, it will show our share of that particular asset. and included within the income of the services and the expenditure. So just calculated in that.
So you'll be able to point us to that on the balance sheet directly.
On the balance sheet, you'll see our assets, our total assets, which include property.
Right, but we don't
So you won't
refer
see
to
a
it in
line
the
that just
narrative.
says the crematorium.
We don't refer to it in the narrative in the way that we do for Daventry Estates. On page 107.
There's a note in there, so
There is a note there. We'll just try and...
but it's not separately broken out as a figure.
No,
It's just lost into the other.
And this is where you had a frank and robust debate order with Adrian.
I have to say, and I do apologise, auditors, I had a very frank and
Robust.
debate with our auditors in 2014-15, where we agreed where the crematorium should be, and it was actually following their own quality review that they changed their mind. So we had to amend it in 15-16, but I had thought we reached agreement in 14-15.
I think where you have more information on the company can be found, I see now why you call it T-Deco.
Yes.
Should we have something more information we found about the crematorium at whatever their website is?
No, because they don't need to prepare accounts. The T-Deco, as a private company, do. The T-Deco is a committee arrangement, so that there is no separate accounts that they have to prepare. Crematorium, sorry. They don't have to prepare accounts. Rugby report theirs in their accounts, and we do ours in our accounts. So
Daventry Estates is a limited company,
It is, yes.
and that has to produce accounts for companies' house.
yes, they do.
Do they come to members at all?
No, as I
Should
said,
they?
no,
Why not?
because it's a private company. They're
It's
not
a
required.
subsidiary of the council, should we not see them?
They are available to members, but they're not brought to members for approval because it's not required.
It's standalone,
Yeah, it's standalone.
It's a subsidiary of the council.
set up by the council.
Yeah, but the shareholder, I presume the council is the single subscribing shareholder,
Yeah.
and therefore the council is the shareholder, so should receive the accounts. And if you were to call an AGM, who would represent the shareholder?
There are members on the board.
No. Who would represent the shareholder if you called an AGM or an EGM?
Officers of the council.
Interesting. Perhaps that's one the monitor officer might like to review the next time he reviews the constitution, because I would have anticipated that the shareholders would have been represented by the members, not by the officers. But I'll defer that to the monitoring officer.
We'll get clarity. The people who sit on that are not here tonight, but we'll get clarity on that. And if there is a need to adjust, then we can look at that. But they're not need to adjust.
No,
just
that's
review.
why I'll refer it to you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Chair, we'll just clarify, the prior year adjustment regarding the crematorium is set out in note 9 to the accounts. There's some narrative that explains the position and also gives the table as to showing what the impact of the adjustment was.
Just got one more. It's only the technical one, which is... I know it's in it because I read it. But it's said unusable reserve, which seems a bit strange to those two words. Can you tell me just what unusable reserve is?
Okay, I suppose the three main unusable reserves, the revaluation reserve. So if when you buy a property and you spend cash, you capitalise that asset. If in future years you revalue it, you increase the value of the asset and you post them out to the revaluation reserve. You can't spend that. So
But the assets just increased.
It's an accounting entry, that's why it's classified as an unusable reserve.
But it's just the assets increased in value.
Yes.
Which is what you'd do every 3 years, 5 years, whatever the asset.
Yep.
Okay.
Then there's the pensions reserve, for example, which is equal opposite to the pensions liability. Because in public sector accounts, the impact of the pensions does not impact on council taxpayers. So there's an adjustment that, although you have to reflect the liability liability in your balance sheet, you're allowed to take the effect out, and that's dealt with through the pensions reserve.
Okay, so actually 24 million deficit this year from 32 the previous year. Okay, I'll come on to that if I may when you just got another question. Thank you.
So, Chair, just on that point, I think we mentioned this before about getting hold of a glossary with regard to some of these terminologies. Like there is a lot of experience at this table. We know exactly what is being talked about with regard to words like unqualified and materiality and the rest of it. And I don't know where we got with that. I think we posed the question it was going to be.
If I may, Chair, through you, certainly in the statement of accounts we have a glossary at the back. Interestingly, unusable reserves is not in there, but often when you look at documents that you produce year on year and you try to think of all the things to cover, so I'll certainly take note of that. There is a glossary at the back of the statement.
What page is that on?
Of the report,
Not of the audit
finishes
report, but in the statement.
133 of 170 and it starts about 8 or 9 pages before then.
Yeah, 122.
Yeah. And unqualified and qualified audit is also not good. Any other points from members? There are a couple that I thought might be helpful if you could add some clarity to, which are on report page 18, around the recommendation that senior staff should review each of the journals in future. Is that what period do you suggest that they're reviewed, and what's your definition of senior staff?
It would be a sensible thing to the recommendation, actually, wouldn't it? Which is actually on page 20, 30 of the full report. So that sets out in a little bit more detail.
Is that your page?
Your page 30.
It just says there is sufficient processes and controls and reconciliation. That's all it says in your recommendation, which supports the recommendation on page 18. And that's why I wondered what you meant by senior staff and the period of which you do. Is that a monthly signing off, and what sort of staff should sign off, what sort of staff?
Okay, within the accountancy services, there's myself as the Chief Finance Officer, and I have 2 principal accountants. So we 3 are considered in instances of where John and Adrian are coming from, the senior officers, so just those 3. You'll be surprised to know that I don't put many journals through myself. The team do that for me. So my 2 senior principal accountants input journals themselves. And the recommendation is that either I should be reviewing them or they should be reviewing each of us. And my opinion is that's what being did.
How did it get picked up then?
Through exactly that, in terms of the processes and procedures, if there's an erroneous journal put through, all the processes that we have in terms of budget monitoring, in terms of reconciliations that take place, that's where we would pick up if there were any erroneous ones done. And certainly, if I link that to, if somebody was going to, if I look at it from a fraudulent point of view, for instance, if somebody was trying to do a journal to hide, a payment being made, if I then go to the payments arrangements where no one officer, certainly not those senior staff, can make a payment. So I'm quite satisfied with the number of journals that go through and what they do. There are processes and procedures in place that would pick up if one had been done by accident, and it would be was no requirement to.
So effectively you've decided not to go along with KPMG's recommendation.
Yeah, and I would point out that whilst it's on KPMG's list, Scott picked up this particular issue some time ago, so it's not new. Some years ago we picked this up. It's not something that's just been picked up now. And we discussed, and I actually went through the processes with Scott as to what was there and what wasn't, and why I thought it was reasonable that those two officers don't need to have them checked by me or each other. I'm satisfied with.
Is it possible to ask KPMG what their opinion is on their recommendation having been refused?
Yes, you're more than welcome to ask. I mean, this is a control issue, not a substantive issue. So as a result of this, because of the way we assess the controls over journals, it changes the way that we have tested journals. So we've tested more, and we've tested more substantively rather than relying on the control. So in that sense, and as Adrian said earlier, we didn't find any errors in that. So in that sense, we are happy to sign the accounts because we're happy that the amounts are right. We still think it's not ideal that you have unreviewed journals. It's actually not totally uncommon. There's a variety of arrangements. For example, in another council, they do a small sample afterwards on a risk basis, and they only review those. So it's not completely black and white. There are different arrangements in different places, and you can certainly talk about what the real risks are, as Audra has. And the fact that those are mitigated by other things. So that's all valid. We would still say that it's not ideal to have unreviewed journals.
Right. But if you've got a regular system of monthly review discussions, is that not just another mechanism of picking these up anyway? So why would that not suffice?
Monthly review discussions amongst that group of senior officers. Is that what you're referring to? I mean, I suppose that is there a risk that one of the senior officers, is putting through journals that that they don't want to talk to the others about, and that wouldn't get picked up.
Anything other than Chair? From a governance perspective, if we were persuaded by KPMG's recommendation there to do something as described, could we propose that we actually take on board their action? How does that work?
I'm going to just push it on because there are duties that the CFO has, and the CFO is there for you as a council to represent you as the council in the best accounting practice, in this case she sees fit. And it's kind of then having to take that because there are technical expectations. So I think it is appropriate to expand on that, to answer that very point as to why can't we then take on this suggestion?
And I would add, from reading the report, there are two bits that one should refer to back on page 14 of 170 or page 6. First of all, they're issuing an unqualified audit opinion on the authority. And secondly, we have noted an improvement in the quality of the accounts and the supporting working papers. So I think our questions are right, but I think overall the KPMG are saying exactly what we would want to hear from them, and we've tested that assumption and thinking, and Audra has robustly defended her position, quite rightly, and Simon has supported that from a monitoring officer perspective. So I think on this section we've probably done a good scrutiny of what's happening and what this part of the report is telling us. So perhaps we should move on to John now.
Can I just make the observation, as a former Section 151 officer myself, I personally would have made the same decision as well. I agree with Audra on this.
Super. Well, that confirms our assumptions and the real.
Can I
So let's stop just coming for a second.
Can I just add to that as well from an internal auditing perspective? We actually do annually some work on many councils ourselves. I mean, the external auditors can place reliance on our work, but we do try and avoid duplication, but we see that the main accounting system is one of the key areas that we should audit internally, and we do similar testing ourselves, which adds to the testing that they do annually as well.
Thank you, Chair. So, taking on board other comments since my question, it still leaves a question. I'm not saying we have to do anything, but what is our role? Should we be minded to recommend something in this situation?
I believe that actually when it comes to my report, it asks you to
we have to approve it.
Yeah.
You have to approve it.
Yeah.
So at that point, we could have the opportunity to challenge.
You could, if we felt as a committee.
Of course.
Yeah. Shall we move on, John?
Yes, so let's just do value for money then, moving on to your page 25. That page sets out the approach to the value for money work. This actually changed a little bit this year. I mean, not that significantly, but the bit that was pulled out that is most obviously slightly different is if you look at the blue circles.
Yeah, black and white.
If you look at the circles, the circles with informed decision making, sustainable resource deployment, and working with partners and third parties. So these are the sub-criteria that that were brought in for this year that we're looking at as part of our value for money work. So informed decision making is about the governance of good decisions, the quality of management information, and obviously particularly financial information. Sustainable resource deployment is essentially looking at your plans for resources, for your people, your money, your assets. And working with partners and third parties, it is about those arrangements that are increasingly important. So this was a reframing by the National Audit Office of the scope of our value for money work. So it's just making that point. Having said that, the overall approach remained fairly similar to previous years where we're looking at a specific risk area and then looking at that in more detail. So moving on to page 27 of your report, what we've done on value for money, having considered the key risk areas, is we focused on financial resilience particularly. I mean, it's in the light of the autumn statement and the pressure on local government finances, you know, the fact that the end of RSG, Revenue Support Grant, this is a key issue that we thought it was appropriate to look at the arrangements in more depth. And the other specific local issue was about whether there was a risk to value for money from the issues at the county council. So we looked at both of those issues, and in terms of the financial resilience, the way we addressed it, remember we're looking at arrangements as part of value for money. We looked at the way that you planned for your medium-term financial plans. How do you set the assumptions on that? How do you work through the model? And what does the outcome say about your financial position? And because you do end up in a healthy financial position both now and as projected by the plan at the moment, then that allows us to reach our positive value for money conclusion. Turning the page, we cover briefly the county element of it. I mean, there's a lot going obviously on that we don't necessarily want to get into, but I suppose the nub of it from the value for money arrangements point of view is, has it had, or is it likely to have imminently a serious negative financial effect? And so far the evidence is not. There's been some particular issues, but nothing significantly that has put pressure on the district directly. So that's actually the end of value for money. So should we just pause for questions then before we do the appendices?
Thank you. Chair, a question on the expanded scope elements, sustainable resource deployment and working with partners and third parties. Could KPMG give us a quick portrait of how they would audit against those particular aspects? Give us some understanding of the methodology, etc.
Could you just give a pen picture of how you would audit against those new criteria? Right. All blue circles and black and white ones.
Would you want to kick off on that?
So how do you get satisfied with those criteria?
Our first protocol is to consider as a at a higher level, really, what are any particular risks. So in this case, we've picked up the financial resilience and capacity. So we're looking at these with the forward financial plan. Now, in terms of looking at that as an overall risk and what arrangements the authority has in place to address that risk, in that context, we're then looking to see is there information being fed through to senior management and to members, which allows you to make informed decisions? So, what is the quality of that information that's coming through? In terms of sustainable resource deployments, have you actually got the financial capacity to deliver what you want to do as an authority? And working with partners and third parties, because recognising that authorities are not working alone, particularly, and we're seeing it more and more in partnership, whether it's in partnership with other local authorities, other private sector bodies or third sector. How are you working together as an authority and these other bodies to deliver the best value for your local communities?
And Chair, can I come back on that further? How do you actually assess that in order to be able to say that's met? So can you talk to... I think the trick we always have in these meetings is understanding how you go about the process, so we can kind of consider it more deeply ourselves. So how would you go about understanding working with partners and third parties? Talk to us a bit about the audit process.
I mean, I think one of the answers to that is there are a set of things that we've always looked at that are underpin all of these. So if you look at your governance arrangements, if you look at your risk register process, if you look at how you build up your AGS, your annual governance statement, I mean, one way of looking at certainly the informed decision making is that you look at all the different systems and controls that are built up to allow you to say give the AGS statement. Those are all elements of good governance that we can see and tick off, if you like, if you want to sort of try and look at it in audity terms, that we can see that exist, and that based on our history, on the fact that we've worked with you over a number of years, that gives us a sense of whether they've worked. Then in terms of updating that, there's regular conversations we have with senior officers. So we meet regularly with both the chief executive and with the finance team, and we talk to them about what are the current challenges and issues in terms, for example, of what are the partnerships or the arrangements that you're entering into, and how are you assuring yourselves that you've gone through appropriate processes, and then we can look at the papers that underpin that, the committee papers or whatever, that allow us to see that you put appropriate decision-making arrangements in place. That sort of comes some of the more specific practical tests that we do, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I was really looking for, actually, is the kind of practical things you do, how you go about finding the data, management interviews, looking at papers, etc. And basically how you're persuaded that we deserve a tick in that area, essentially. Thank you.
Just two quick ones, please. We've got to find, I think, 4 million over the next 5 years. 4 years? 5 years, sorry. But I think what you're saying is the track record wouldn't give you any cause for concern, considering how prudent the council is achieving that. And the second one is, you can probably say it's in the papers, how do you get to know that Northampton are 8.7 adrift of their budget?
I think that's a speculative question, Kevin, that isn't necessarily relative to the VFM.
Oh, is it not?
You may have asked more about the core spending power, perhaps, which is a phrase that's used in here that's not in the glossary, and I'm sure members the other end might like to know what that means.
That was a publicly available bit of information. So that came from is actually at the planning stage. So that was in our plan, and it was taken from the publicly available source.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have. Sorry, Shaz. I think we have that conversation every year, actually.
Any other questions? I've just got one just to, on the same page, you talk about our prudent approach to business rates and being already by new historical appeals cases. What's the basis by which you discounted that by 50%?
It's my basis, not the auditors. Where, as members will know from the budget reports that are presented to Strategy Group and approved by full council, where it's explained that the volatility in business rates from appeals and things like that, until it's actually concluded those appeals, we only present 50% of the growth because of the volatility. So it's my assessment of that on KPMG.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on that section? James, on to move on to the appendices.
If we could just quickly run through those. So we've dealt with Appendix 1, the recommendation on the journal. Appendix 2 sets out a summary of the audit differences, of which, as we said, there aren't any. It also covers a bit more about materiality, actually, which may help answer that question more fully. And then Appendix 3 has our declaration of independent objectivity, which covers 2 further pages. I mean, it may seem a lot, but it is important. It's important to us and hopefully to you. And then that's concluded with the audit fee, which, as you can see, is as was planned and is gone down from last year.
There's still too much there. No comment. Colleagues, any questions on the appendices?
Only a very trivial one, if I may, Chair. Appendix 1 and 2 is written as a number, and Appendix 3 is written as a word. Is there any particular reason for that?
No, apologies for that. You spotted that one. I hadn't spotted it when I wrote it.
Always good for them to spot these things up.
So can we thank KPMG for their report at this time, and then we move on to the report on page 37, which will be led by Order and her advice to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'd actually like to start off by saying to members that within the advice, particularly A, that the proposed funding of the 2015-16 capital spending programme is not actually required to be in there, and I'd like to propose that it's deleted from the advice as it's not required.
Colleagues,
Entirely my fault for
are you content
putting it
for Order to remove that? If you are concerned, it is contained in the annual statement of accounts. You're all happy? Thank you.
Thank you.
As we've always done in that way, Order will let it go.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is, I think, I can't remember, it's the second or third year now. We used to take the statement of accounts to committee by the statutory deadline in June. That's no longer required, and actually it makes more sense to me that you're being asked to approve the statement of accounts knowing that they've been audited and that they do represent a true and fair view of this council's statement of accounts. So to that end, I think this is an improvement. Part of the work that we did for the statement of accounts, and I'm absolutely delighted with the result to have no material misstatements, as you can imagine, but also that there was minimal changes required, and most of those were of a presentational nature. And as you've heard earlier, we have many robust debates with the auditors on the best way to present things, and sometimes we have differing opinions, but we generally get there. I would add that we never argue, as referred to by John earlier. We generally don't argue, we have robust debates.
Perhaps robust could be added to the glossary. We're saying that in brackets, not arguing.
So obviously, in terms of the regulations and everything else, you are required to approve the accounts by the 30th of September, and in future years that date is moving. So the 17-18 accounts will actually move, where I have to sign the accounts by the 31st of May. Currently it's the 30th of June, and the auditors will have to provide their opinion by the 31st of July, which is currently the 30th of September. Now that's quite a slice off the time that we have to produce these accounts, and so what we've put into practice very early on, and certainly we did with these statement of accounts, was to see how much time we could shave off that, and set myself and my team the tight deadline of trying to get these accounts done by the 31st of May, and that includes changing hearts and minds of those that supply information to us in order to put that in, and it means agreeing very early on, and we have these robust debates when there's new things to include in the accounts, and we'll know that the authority is quite innovative in its approach, setting up wholly owned subsidiaries and going into partnerships. So whenever they happen throughout the year, we have very early discussions with the auditors so that we can agree the way forward on how they're going to be included, rather than just produce the accounts and then argue over whether we think they should be presented differently or have a robust debate. So to that end, we did meet our own sort of internal deadline and actually invited the auditors in earlier. What it did give us is, because we still have the statutory deadline of the 30th of June, it did give us some qualitative time to look at what we produced, and I like to think that that's been reflected, and certainly the comments from KPMG, the improvement in the working papers. I quite frankly will be amazed if in 50 years' time there isn't that line that says there could be an improvement, because there's always room for improvement, but we like to see progress. That said, in terms of the report itself, there is a change this year. It was mentioned before in terms of the narrative report, and I'm sure members will have read the whole statement of account page by page. And the narrative report includes a lot more qualitative data, a lot more about the authority and what it's doing, and not just the pound signs. So I think it gives the readers a better understanding of what the council is trying to do and achieve, and how we did against that. But other than that, members, I'm happy for you to...
Shall we start, colleagues, by taking the report? So up to page 42, if you've any questions that you'd like to ask for on the report. I'll take that as a no. We then have a series of resolutions to take, and the next obvious one is to take the letter of representation, as that's next in the pack. Are you content with the contents of the letter of representation, and that Audra and I sign that on behalf of the council? Yes. We're all agreed on that.
Excellent. Members, do you mind if we do that as we go along, so that I know that I've got everything done?
Sign something else?
Yeah. Well, you and I both have to sign it, and then...
We'll then take the statement of accounts, which is page 47 through to page 133. If you've any questions, queries or thoughts on the numbers and the narrative contained within those pages. Colleagues, do you have any questions?
One question. On page 105, I see halfway down that it refers to a senior officer being married to a contractor who's been paid for building work. Is the senior officer employed in any part of the council that is responsible for letting the manager monthly by the contractor?
No. Sorry, Chair, through you. No.
It's okay. Just a robust response, I think. As we've come
much
to
room for the debate,
as we've come to learn from colleagues, anything else?
Got what
want to go back to the pensions I mentioned before.
Could you give us the page reference?
Yeah, 112. County Council has agreed a strategy with the scheme actuary to achieve a funding level of 100% over the next 20 years. How is that monitored? I mean, it's all right saying that because that's, 20 years is a fair way out. So that's bringing it back to zero. How? Could someone give me some confidence that that's going to be hit? And is there a plan that shows it year by year how that deficit reduces?
Yeah, I would answer that. Obviously, the pension fund is run by the county council, and they have a pensions board, a pension committee where they have to agree the strategy going forward. And one of the new requirements that happened last year is that they must have a pensions board set up to actually scrutinise that they have these strategies in place and that they're following the law. I am a member of that board. I applied to go on that, and I'm actually the employer's representative. So it is new, and we're learning our way. But so they have their committee to approve all of that, and then there's this board to check that they're doing everything lawful and legal, and that they have those particular strategies in place.
And you're confident of, sorry, through the chair, you're confident, if you're attending those meetings, that will be hit in 20 years?
I'm as confident as any crystal ball gazing can be when it comes to projecting 20 years forward, that there is a strategy in place that aims to meet that, I would like to say for sure.
Is it related to investment?
Yes.
In the sense of, this is what we think this investment will actually produce?
I mean, there's lots of strands to the actual strategy. It's a public document that you can actually read. Produced by the county council. And the strategy covers many.
Could we ask you that you've got the link to that in the minutes, and then colleagues can go and look at it?
I'm sure I can, yeah.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Find somebody who can.
It's not a number. Colleagues, any other questions? The only one that you may like to just clarify, given our histories, on page 114, where we talk about our risks of counterparties and how they're assessed, given our long-term relationship with Iceland. Colleagues may just want a little clarity over the jargon that's used halfway down the page under the table. It just explains how we choose our partners.
Right, so if I understand the question correctly, obviously when we produce our investment strategy, of which there's a great deal of detail in there, and we use various agencies that, in order to get a rating, have to go through a very vigorous routine of having, every element of their business scrutinised, including, their balance sheet and everything else. Now, that's put very simply, and then following that exercise, they then are given a rating by the agencies. We use Fitch, which is one of the recognised agencies, and it's about our risk appetite, because within those, as to whether we have AA rating for the sovereignty or AAA rating. And on top of that, we use Treasury advisors, we use Capita Services, who then take all of those credit rating agencies' results and look at all sorts of things, including one of the items is called the credit default swap, for instance, which is just a measurement of that bank's likelihood of defaulting on their credit arrangements. So there's whole layers of things that take into account, and then our advisors have a coloured duration. So for instance, it's coded red, they advise that you don't invest with them for more than 6 months, or whether it's orange, it's 12 months. And I'd advise members, if they want even more details, to actually go back to the investment strategy that's approved by members in February.
Thank you. Can we then just confirm that we are happy to approve the tax statements and accounts? I think we previously agreed the responses set out in the KPMG report, and we've noted the value for money conclusions. I think we've covered all of the advice points there, and obviously advice A has been withdrawn. Tony, you wanted to add something on training? John.
Yes, well, just to say that we are planning to hold an event for training event for audit committee members throughout Northamptonshire, so we're inviting audit committees from across Northamptonshire. We audit most of the bodies within Northamptonshire. Particularly looking at the role of the audit committee, partly thinking about going forward, partly in light of what Audra said around the fact the timetable's coming forward, what does that mean? And also drawing on our experience of audit committees in other sectors, like in housing, in education, in the health service. And I suppose part of it is that the document that we produced, the thing that we've just gone through, this report to those charged with governance, a lot of that is actually dictated to us, so it's perhaps reflecting on some of the change, what the changes that are going on, the pressures that, the forces of change that are on the auditors and what the expectations are, so that you can understand, what's coming up and what's changing, and a chance for you to talk to other people in the role. What does the role of the audit committee mean going forward? So, if you can make it, that would be great.
And you'll let us know that through Audrey.
We'll actually probably send an invite out directly.
Okay. Possibly sensible to let John and Adrian go at this point. Yeah.
Just one more.
If you're content, or have you any further questions for them, or we could just bore them for another half an hour, 3/4 an hour if you wished. Thank you very much, chaps, for your time this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Sign off. Yeah, do.
That was done.
Right, we're moving swiftly on to the Internal Audit Charter, and I think this is Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, the Internal Audit Charter is something that it's not a new document to the Council. It's something we've had in place in this format for the last couple of years ago when it was brought before this committee for approval. It is something that it's sort of like our contract SLA that I have in terms of a service with the Council and management, and you as a collective board or audit committee or corporate governance committee. And it is something I've shared with you all at some point as you become new members of this committee, so hopefully it isn't the first time you've seen this. It's timely that for an update we've had some recent changes to the public sector internal audit standards and other changes to responsibilities of my own within the Council. And in essence, the Charter defines what internal audit does and how it fits into the Council rather than any other, in other words, the local arrangements for internal audit here at Daventry. There is of course, a list of requirements within the public sector internal audit standards for the template for this audit charter, which have been addressed and taken all into account. As indicated in the covering report, the significant changes that have been made have been around the inclusion of an overall mission for internal audit, which is at page 139 or page 3 of my charter, and it's a simple statement which is now mandatory for inclusion in internal audit charters. Around the mission of internal audit is to enhance and protect organisational value by providing risk-based and objective assurance advice and insight. That's really a general overall opinion in terms of what we do, but there are definitions and statutory things behind that also, in terms of within the accounts and audit regulations, which were revised for 2015. In terms of just below that on that page, you will see the definition of, or the requirement for the council to undertake an effective internal audit. Other changes that were incorporated have included the core principles of professional practice, and they are contained on page 141, page 5 of the Charter, and you'll see the bulleted points there. There's nothing new there. It's really about the internal audit sectors firming up within some core principles of what we already do, and some of the fundamentals have already they've been in place for a number of years in terms of independence, integrity and objectivity. So there's nothing new there, but obviously there's it's part of this continuous improvement of adopting these public sector internal audit standards a couple of years ago, and how we have tried to internal audit as a profession evolves, and we're trying to ensure that we move and what we do locally reflects that. In addition to those changes that have been made, the substantial change to the internal audit charter has been around that of covering the counter-fraud role that I have a responsibility for under the Council's anti-fraud, bribery and corruption policy. Section page 146, there's quite a largest section there on the counter-fraud role, and how under the policy that, and in terms of me taking under my wing the counter-fraud officer, and how I am responsible for delivering the counter-fraud strategy on behalf of the monitoring officer. So that's a significant change that, and something that I've considered as part of taking on those duties doesn't impair my independence. That's pretty much the changes. And other than that, I'm happy to take some questions on any part of that.
Yeah, it's with all these things, it's about how effective and efficient are the outcomes. Now, once the audit has been done and maybe corrective measures recommended, the appropriate follow-up. How successful are the appropriate follow-up follow-ups?
Yeah.
So when you go back, is everything, or do you have to go back on a number of occasions? So when we identify the correction, for me it's about making sure we get up to speed as quickly as possible. Do you find that we are doing that, or do you find it takes a number of the follow-ups to actually get us to where we need to get to?
Sure. You may recall at the last meeting that I wasn't able to attend was my annual audit review, and within there I sort of tried to explain a little bit about how that works and how much involvement, not just from my perspective, but also the involvement of the Risk Management Officer working group that looks at that specifically, and looks at also the high priority recommendations that have been made, and also then reflects then the management performance framework in terms of the one-to-ones that happen between the managers and their service managers managers and the deputy chief executive and the managers as well. And from my perspective, if you look in there as well, there's also that those barometer indicators that the committee have set a target on in terms of the completion or implementation of the high-risk recommendations, and I also provide figures for the implementation of those that are below that, medium and low, for all of the recommendations. I've commented in my annual audit reviews year on year the improvements that have been made to that, and we are now at a point unprecedented really over the period of years where we're achieving very high implementation of those. And I think for us, where we used to be, say 5 years ago, we were at a stage where we didn't have that. Yes, internal audit was part of the organisation, and certainly the Corporate Governance Committee has enabled me to push internal audit further up onto the top table in terms of senior management team also. We're now at the stage where I'm going to do follow-up audits where I almost know that the work's done, because they're always providing feedback, and I'm always prompting them for feedback, and they're getting that from the top down in terms of that message. So to answer your question, I'm almost going out and doing one follow-up, and we're finding that things have been implemented.
Fantastic. And improved.
And improved, obviously, with the recommendations and improvements to the internal control environment.
So does that demonstrate the culture within the organisation is one of because that's the frustrating thing, and when I've done in my profession investigations into departments, it is about the culture of wanting to improve and improving, so the organisation is more effectively. So the culture seems to be right, if what you're saying is
very much that. You can't make those sorts of changes without the right culture, and it has to come from the top down.
Yeah.
And that is clearly there from my perspective. For sure. I can't do my job without it.
I was just going to say, Dad Scott said that, but from my perspective, and Scott mentioned about 5 years ago, and I think that was fair to say, that we did need to do something extra. We weren't having problems, but we wanted to do something extra. And culture is definitely what we focus on. So we have made a point of holding people to account, having it exposed if need be, that things aren't improving enough. And it is good to see that change in implementation of recommendations. It has improved considerably. I remember the committee that set the target, and we said at the time, yeah, that's challenging, but okay, you're there as a committee to set the target. We've met it. Our quest is to keep it up, because the difficulty is if you get to a high standard, sometimes you can only go down. So we're conscious of that, but from a management perspective, culture is clearly one of the aspects we wanted to address. Obviously there's some link with what's been happening nationally with certain other councils, shall we say, who have difficulties. That helps reinforce the point as well that you can be caught out, folks. So please make sure you've got your house in order. The please comes with a you will get your house in order.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I remember actually the point Councillor Ogle was referencing. It was about the turnaround time for corrective actions to be closed out, and we did have quite a discussion about it in the last meeting, or a previous meeting anyway, and the pressure or the activity you have to pursue to get those closed. So that's quite fresh in my knowledge. There's a couple of I actually have 3 questions. The first one is, this document, once it's, if we approve it now, where does it go next? Where does it live? How does it see the light of day, etc.? Is it on the website, for instance?
It is on the website.
And this will go on the website as well?
Yeah, it's on the website. It's something that we try and use to raise awareness about internal control anyway, and our relationship with management. It's on we have a specific intranet and internal audit page as well, together with a floor page separately that we have as well, to try and raise awareness, not just with you members, but also with the rest of the council and the council officers. It's something we refer to if we need to, although we are reflected within the financial regulations and the Constitution, the Council's Constitution also. So it brings that all together for us. We have other things that come off the back of this that we do, in terms of even us as auditors. I get my auditors to sign an annual declaration around independence, integrity, conflicts of interest and objectivity. So there are lots of other underlying things and for arrangements underneath as well. So yes, it's a living document for us. It isn't something that's just there and then placed to one side. And we have to demonstrate how we achieve this as well. Obviously, I'll have my own internal assessments, but obviously we're leading towards the external review that's going to be coming up within the next 12 months. And they will be using this as their guide to saying, well, how does this achieve application, or how does this achieve the public sector internal audit standards, and then how are these actually being applied in practice? And then gaining the views of yourselves and others and other stakeholders.
Great, thank you. Good long answer there, thank you. And the second one was, you referenced continuous improvement, and we've also had started talking about the journey from 5 years ago, etc. But can you give us an idea, what continuous improvement initiatives do you have for the next 12 months ahead?
Yes.
Can you describe some of those now to us, please?
Yes. I'm trying to recall which report it has last come to this committee. I do a self-assessment, and there's an improvement compliance, actually an improvement action plan that comes from that. Whether it came to the one in June, I'm trying to recall whether it did or not. But there is an action plan. It's got a number of 10 to 12 actions on there that are trying to achieve and demonstrate some of those core principles, those new core principles. Off the top of my head, some examples are having greater alignment between our work and the Council's Strategic Risk Register, and trying to demonstrate that a bit more to you here when I put together and you approved the annual audit plan. There's some elements in there around the quality assurance and improvement programme that I have to have in place. Yes, I've got elements of that, but I need to bring that together for the standards. There's something along the line of, you may recall, it's within the annual governance statement around fraud risk. That's another area where we've done quite a bit of work on. So a lot of these are being worked on over a period of time, and it is part of that continuous improvement. It's like Audra said in hers. We never stop still. It's always something that we can improve, and we're looking to also move further into making our working papers more electronic as well. So yes, I think certainly maybe at the next committee or the one after that, certainly you will be receiving an update on that.
Okay, thank you. And final question, Chair, if I may, and that is, I think it's maybe more of a request than a question, actually. You probably heard me say this before about understanding how the process works, particularly for our own education. Do you think it might be useful to have maybe an evening training session for corporate governance members and others, where we actually bring this document to life a little bit more in terms of how you actually practice, how you would approach the plan and that kind of thing, so we get a bit more understanding of how it works.
Yeah. Can I just ask, Chair? I mean, I'm happy to, certainly I always, for new members to this committee, put the invite there for one-on-one training or in small groups.
I keep asking this question.
And I think you, maybe when you started to join this...
Do you mean the committee or the council?
The council.
The council. Right. So is that a question for...
Might be a question.
It's a request in actual fact.
Let's have the request. You've got it? That's the...
You've got it.
That's absolutely
You've had it before, so it's again a request.
What I was trying to remember whilst you were talking about it was whether it came up when we had the community development discussion about council learning. I don't recall it then, but that doesn't matter. We can look at it. There are member training sessions in the diary, some of which I think I've got blanks at the moment. So if there's an interest, it potentially could slot in. I hope there's the interest, Council.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. And actually, I mean, a great topic to hang it on is this document.
So we formally request that to go in one of the blank slots to look at the internal audit charter and the training that the wider council might need around that.
I was just going to say, Becky, interested in what you went on to supplement that with was how the audit process works, if you like. What does an audit do rather than what's the charter about?
Well, it underpins
the audit do?
Yeah.
The audit charter is all about auditing ultimately, isn't it? The internal charter.
Jeff,
Hi, can I ask you something? Sorry.
So can I just finish on the training point?
Do we need to? I thought we've got there.
Well, I think in terms of getting other members engaged in it, so I think you guys can help by taking it through the members' learning and development group.
Yeah, Chair, which we can put on our agenda. I don't know. Obviously, every committee has this an agenda item once a year. So, and I'm sure I addressed this last year, this very same topic, but this gives us another.
I think we've got it on.
Thank you, Chair.
Jason.
So, can I just ask you about the counter fraud strategy?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there were some amendments were made in terms of appointment of an officer in recent years.
Yeah, counter fraud officer that's within my team, yes.
It's littered with questions, this question, but how much fraud has been detected? And is there any duplicity of roles? Who's under your wing? What's the main... Because we may reach a point where there's little or no fraud detected after a period of time, and a cumulative amount of salary, which could be quite substantive when we haven't actually detected. I may be wrong.
Yeah, I think it's different. There's certainly different. Sorry, through the chair. There's certainly different strands to that question, and where we are now from where we've come, say, 12 months, 18 months ago. Certainly, we didn't have a corporate fraud resource until March last year. What we were finding is we were very reactive to fraud investigations. Management would call on the internal audit to do some fraud investigation work, and that was significantly impacting on the internal audit plan, delivery of the internal audit plan. The decision was made and sort of courted the advice of support of both management and members of this committee around trying to get that corporate capacity in place. We are now starting to deliver on the counter-fraud strategy and some of the preventative measures and raising of awareness, and there's a programme being developed for that. We still have to be reactive to fraud, and now I have a resource that I can call on, and the strategy elements can stop whilst those investigations are taking place. But we also then need to be a bit more proactive in trying to identify fraud as well. I mean, certainly as an authority we've had a lot in terms of we used to have a unit that dealt with benefit fraud, and we've never had that for any other aspects. So we will be doing, off the back of the fraud risk register work that we've done, we will be picking up a programme of work, going out there and not only educating those areas around raising and identifying fraud, bribery and corruption, but also trying to identify it for ourselves as well. So we're very early in that process. In terms of what's been identified as an authority to date, you'll receive, and you may recall at the last meeting, management prepare an annual fraud report as well, which has some indicators within there. And then we'll also then update you on how we're developing as an organisation in terms of putting those awareness and fraud arrangements in place.
Any other questions on this? Can I just ask that you expand it slightly going forward? Only that I think not all members and not all officers would know what the 7 principles of public life are.
I had the foresight. I saw that myself earlier, and I thought the question might arise, and I forgot to bring it about. But it is actually something that is referenced to within our local code of corporate governance as well.
We ought to spell it out for people.
Yeah.
Other than that, are you happy to agree the advice to approve the charge? Agree. Thank you. We can then move on to revenue and benefits, service, penalty and prosecution policy. Tony.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the last bit of the discussion on Scott's report actually made us fairly neatly into this. The Revenues and Benefits Service investigates fraud as a separate entity from the corporate fraud work that Scott does, because of the peculiarities of that particular service area. What we've got in front of us is a penalty and prosecution policy, which has been updated. It's not been seen by members for quite some time, so timely to bring to members. There's some significant changes last year in that the responsibility for housing benefit fraud has been taken away from the district council and placed firmly with a single fraud investigation service, which is part of the Department for Work and Pensions, who take the lead on benefits, and in the world of universal credit, more and more benefit work has been dealt with by the DWP. So that leaves us as the council in terms of the revenues and benefits area is looking at council tax, and the sub-areas of issue around council tax are council tax support scheme, and also where benefits are applied, such as single person discounts in the council tax scheme. And the penalty prosecution policy will pick those up. So it picks up the change in respect of responsibility for benefit moving to DWP, and brings it up to speed in respect of the work around council tax. I think as much as I would say at this stage.
Colleagues, questions on the paper or the policy?
Yeah, I do have some concerns about this, and so I probably need some understanding. When it comes down to disposal of these cases, the options run from no penalty, caution. It's very similar to how the police deal with it. But with regard to where there has been a loss, surely in any of these disposals must be the repayment of any monies that have been fraudulently gained or discounts obtained. So it's okay that, you know, the council issue a warning letter, but that will be conditional on receiving any monies that the offender should not have gained or discounts gained or extra money gained. Does that make any sense? And it doesn't appear to be anywhere in the lower disposals. But every disposal surely should have a line in it that says all monies, any monies that should have been in the council will be recovered as part of that low-level disposal. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense, and I'm not sure it's actually spelt out in the document in the way that you're asking, but I can assure you that is the way we operate. Yeah. So all monies obtained fraudulently will be reclaimed and penalties applied over and above.
I'm just wondering if that could be included. So in each penalty, there's just a very specific to say that obviously a letter will be issued. You know, the offence is considered low, but all monies will be recovered.
Yeah. In fact, I've just found it is in the policy documents on page 156. Just the last sentence above point 3. The council will seek recovery of all overpayments identified during the investigation process, irrespective of any further sanction or prosecution action.
Okay. Again, and I just read these as yeah, as long as that is the case, and that's why I wanted the understanding, because surely no. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I have a statutory duty as your 151 officer to collect all monies due to this authority. So, regardless of whether this policy was there or not, we'd be pursuing.
So the reality is if it was low level, even if it was £10, we would be getting that money back.
Yes.
Perfect. Love it.
Thank you. I share Councillor Ormer's concern about the document. Yes, I hear what you say about that particular sentence, which is very definitive and says will happen. That isn't shared by all the parts of the document, though, which say the council may issue a warning letter, may consider a local authority caution, may write to the person, may consider prosecution, equally by inference, therefore, may not do those. And also, there's nothing in here about how adherence to this is monitored and reported either within the council to senior management or to members if that was considered appropriate. I'm just concerned that there seems to be a lot of scope there for things not to happen if there's a temptation for it not to happen. And people who defraud this council really should be pursued.
I think if I can come back on the maze, essentially what we've got is a framework, but each case is treated on its merits, and we can't absolutely say we will apply any particular sanction at any time, given there may be some circumstances that prevent us from doing that. So that's why it's not.
Does it actually say that there will be a sanction of whatever type it is among the staff? There's a list of things that might happen. Or does it say something will happen drawn from this list, depending on the circumstances?
On page 155, the sentence in bold. Bottom of section 1, the bold text. Fraud against the council is not acceptable in any form, and the council will investigate and take appropriate action to counter any fraudulent actions.
That doesn't say there will be a sanction of any sort.
No, you're right. There's a degree of discretion that's being suggested as appropriate to have in a policy.
Okay.
And that's what you're challenging.
Indeed. But then who exercises the discretion? Because the way I read this is the investigating officer, who I assume is reasonably junior, potentially within revenues and benefits, comes to a view as to whether or not they should be prosecuted. It's written in here somewhere. That's on page 155. And it then goes to the revenues and benefits manager, who seems to make the decision. So the revenues and benefits manager is billing, collecting, investigating, deciding who gets prosecuted, in effect. All seems rather focused on that one individual. I mean, I think surely there ought to be some sort of control system around this, but if it is there, I'm not getting it from this document.
Certainly that is the case. You're reading it correctly, that it is the revenues and benefits manager who is the decision maker. Look at the colleagues and help the back control.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that whilst it may not be documented, the revenue and benefits manager does come and talk to me about particular prosecution cases, and for any of those, we look at the likelihood of success and the likelihood of recovering the money, because sort of further down the line, and when it comes to write-offs, which are my responsibility, I have to look at when we've got to that, what actions did we take. So yes, he does come and speak to me about particular prosecution cases.
Can I follow up on that? On the non-payments, because we used to have nick a load of people for non-payment of the fine. There's obviously going to be some non-payments here. Do we have the power? Oh, we don't even have access to their money, do we? So with regard to any fine imposed that isn't paid, or any money owed that isn't given to us, presumably there comes a time when we either prosecute or write off.
And this is where we're coming back to, an element of discretion, because just because you found fraud and somebody may be claiming a benefit that they weren't due, that's not to say that they won't continue to be on benefits, and there are restrictions to how much you can recover every week. So within personal circumstances, often things can come along that, you make an agreement for payment and everything else, but their circumstances change, they don't keep to the agreement, and so there's all sorts of processes that go on before we sort of do the ultimate write-off, which, like I say, are done by themselves.
So do we have the power that if they are receiving funds from us, to restricting those funds to ensure that we get our money back?
Yes, we do.
We can do that.
Within a very limited amount. So,
like
for instance,
10p a day for the rest of their life.
I think on one of them, and you'll see it's actually detailed in a report coming up to strategy group. So for those on particular benefits, it's restricted to £3.70 a week. And things like that. So yes, depending on individual circumstances.
But we still pursue it, and we'll have that £3.70.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes, Kevin?
Through your chair, to Tony. I think you're saying now this is related mainly to council tax. Yes, is that right? And I'm sure I've read it here somewhere how many people are, is it 4,500 or something like that, who are on benefit reductions? Tell me if I'm wrong here. So there's a number of people, as a population, that you just look at, because that's where the revenue, that's where the benefit is attached to. So you can go through those and tick them off, or not tick them off, as the case may be, and then you'd go back to them in perhaps several years' time, or if they're still there. That's the process, is it?
Future. It's not just that, because what we will do is look for, if you take a single person discount for example, where we'll review those periodically and we'll have a look at all the single person discounts, and we'll make inquiries where we feel appropriate, where we think there might have been a change, to challenge those who claim the discount. And similarly with those who are claiming the council tax support. So where we think that we need to do something, we will do it, as well as looking at things on a routine basis.
So that's fine, Tony. That's exactly what I meant. You look at a block and then say, right, that's what it is. We then move on and do something else.
Yes, yes, there's programmed work.
Yes, it's programmed through.
Yeah, but we will also react to information that comes to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a look at section 4 of this, which is on page 156, which is the public interest test criteria, which I have to say I really don't like as a section very much. These are the criteria that are used to decide, or some of the criteria that are used to decide whether or not a sanction would be in the public interest, which maybe brings us back to the earlier point about the remote impact. The first bullet point, when a person is suffering from significant mental or physical ill health, how exactly would that be evidenced? I mean, I'm assuming that the Reverend Ben's manager doesn't have any medical competence. What would be significant? How would you do it?
Without getting James to answer, can I pause? Because I think we're getting to a point of real clarity here for me. And I'm just going to check, because the other guys are there. Now, I think what you're all saying is that this document isn't robust enough for our views and maybe doesn't cover all the points that we've been making so far. So rather than prolong the debate, unless there's real to add, that I've no problem if you had. Actually, the message we're giving to the officers is they've got to take this next to strategy. And I think the version between this document and the one that goes to strategy needs to be significantly revised, made more robust in Audrey's words, and addresses a lot of the issues that each of you have raised this evening. I think that's the direction of guidance that we'd like to give to the officers. Would you be in agreement with that? And if so, I'm going to ask Jason to come in next, and if he's got a follow-up, and then we'll come back if necessary.
It's akin to Richard's, Councillor Brian's point. In fact, it's a very, very valid point when you're trying to differentiate between significance of mental and physical ill health. A myriad of diagnoses that might have cognitive problems in terms of memory. Capacity is the issue, that word capacity. So you want to introduce that word somewhere, but that is an overarching.
Okay.
So I agree entirely with your point, and I think really that is illustrated most of all by the third bullet point, which just says social factors, which actually says nothing at all. You can say everything you want, or nothing at all.
Colin?
Yeah, and Chair, I think echoing the others' comments on your own, I think I'm also a little bit confused here, because it's at the top header is called a policy report. So I'm not even sure if this is a policy or if it's got procedures in it. And also, Councillor McCarroll, when we were talking about the process or procedure, and Audrey, you said, well, in practice, this comes to me anyway. Well, I think if it was, we need to be more clear in how we write the document. I don't think it's good enough to ask us to accept a document which actually, where reality is quite different from what may happen in this document today. So I would definitely recommend it goes back for a review.
Should it return to us before going to strategy?
I'll ask that question in a second. Richard? It's just a more general one from the officers, really. With regard, we have this policy, the policies to ensure that we get the monies back. Do we know how successful we have been with regard to getting monies back that have been defrauded from us? So the last fiscal year, do we know how much was defrauded and how much did we actually get back? Because at the end of the day, it's all about success, isn't it? It's about, are these effective and efficient? Are we effective and efficient? So, like, do we know the last fiscal year, how much were we defrauded? How much did we discover we were defrauded from? And how much of that did we actually get back working through some of these policies? Do we know?
Scott, is that?
It isn't really one for me, but what I would have suggested is if I could have seen the report that went, the annual report that went to the due committee, that may have some of that information that we require in it.
If I may, Chair, as well, in terms of answering some of those questions, in terms of saying how much fraud there was, that's assuming that we caught it all.
No, I said how much fraud did we discover, and how much then did we recover of the fraud we discovered?
And the other thing is, in terms of, for want of a better word, calling it fraud, we have overpayments, and those overpayments can occur for many reasons, not all of which are labelled fraud. You know, they've not given us their change of circumstances for whatever reason. So no, I don't have a fraud figure. I have an overpayment figure for which I.
Would that include all the fraud stuff and everything?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of where we've billed, but whether it would be classed specifically as fraud as opposed to.
I think where we're coming from, chaps, is that we want to bring it back to us. Would you agree? Yeah. And I think that would be our request to the officers, that we bring it back to the next meeting to reflect the comments that you've heard tonight, and it can be taken on from there. But in the interim, we don't want them to stop prosecuting people and recovering money outstanding to us.
Just a very final point on that, it's just the word elderly as well. There's demarcation of age, what age, any age.
But there again, why the elderly? I mean, you could get somebody in their late 80s, say, who's sharp as a button, highly intelligent, very affluent. Why should they be let off just because they're in their late 80s?
I think the guys have got it. Okay. Shall we move on to the next paper, which is the corporate complaints document, and that will be Tony again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an annual report. It's the first time it's come to committee as a combined report. You may recall in the past you've received a corporate complaints report, and then at the next meeting, because of the time of the information coming to us, we brought the local government ombudsman's annual letter. The committee expressed the view last year that you'd like to see the two reports together, so it's meant holding the corporate complaints report back till now, but essentially this is what this report now brings. So you've got a package of corporate complaints and then complaints that move on to the ombudsman, which are outside of the council's complaints procedure. What the first part of the report, 4.1, sort of tells us about the process. The council reviewed the corporate compliance procedure last year, 2015, and that really is just a reminder of the procedure. It's a two-stage process for formal complaints, with the exception of complaints relating to the environmental services contract, which go to stage 3 as part of the contractual arrangements there. It changed, the review last year changed from a previous 3-stage complaints procedure to the new 2-stage. The table in 4.3 sets out a comparison of complaints between 14, 15 and 16. So we can see a slight increase in the number of complaints across the board. and there's a detailed analysis of the complaints in the appendix on page 165, which breaks down the complaints into service areas where we've tried to work with the Ombudsman's classification of complaints so we can make some sense out of what the Ombudsman is telling us beyond this report. I will just apologise for the chart on the back of that page, on page 166, which is not very helpful in black and white. And to be honest, it's
great.
to be honest, it's not much better in colour. The percentages, if you're interested, we start at 12 o'clock with the housing, which is 1%, and working round. I think that the significant issue there is the environment or public spacing complaints which are 78%, which is the significantly biggest proportion. But the percentages are actually shown on the analysis on page 165. As mentioned, public space has by far the largest number of complaints, and I think members are well versed with some of the issues around the environmental services contract, and this indeed reflects that. I can stop there, possibly.
Yes, please, Tony.
Okay.
Yes. We'll give the member a chance to give you some feedback. Questions for Tony on this?
Yes, Chair.
Alex?
I think, to make sure I understand, the percentages add up to more than 100. Is that because you could be in two categories at the same time? On page, in 4.3. Table 1, thank you.
The percentages add up to more than 100. Is that just a rounding?
That's a rounding, yes.
Thank you. You always do have to test this, I'm sure.
Yes.
It's not material.
Yeah, it's not material.
It's less than 500,000 over.
And do you want to explain your calculation methodology on the table where you've got, for example, on public space, because it's a nice big number, we can work it out easily. You have 941 stage 1 complaints.
Yes.
Is it of that 941, 97 have moved on to stage 2, and of that 97, 19 have moved on to stage 3, which would mean that your 1057 number is erroneous, or are they different calculations?
They are largely as described, but occasionally we'll get a complaint that comes in at stage 2 or stage 3, depending on the issue. There's also a complication in that a complaint may have started last year as stage 1 and then be escalated to stage 2 this year. So there's not a perfect science.
So is the comparison in table 1, going back to Colin's table, a like-for-like comparison? Because actually the number of complaints is 1232, isn't it, rather than 1359. But if it's a like-for-like comparison, then the difference is 1214 to 1232, which is a marginal change.
Yeah, I mean, the same way of recording is a consistent way of recording from 1415 into 1560.
Yeah.
So I think what we can deduce from that is there has been a small increase in complaints.
And can I just draw members' attention to the letter from the Ombudsman, which is complimentary of the authority. We should note that.
It was. I know we're looking at the processes, but just I'm out of interest with regard to the fee complaints. Presumably, we have processes of getting into to say how can we get that 941 down. I know we look at the process, but is that part of the audit work that goes into think, you know what, let's have a really good look into this to see how we can reduce them coming in the first place?
Gentlemen, as part of our direct engagement with one of the partnership only who serve the contract on our behalf, the contractor direct has been. So, for example, we use feedback from this very process.
Yeah.
Say to the contractor, this isn't good enough, remedy notice will serve. Expect a remedy. So we will be tough using the information we've got. It's good evidence, so we will use it.
And where it's our own performance, so we're pretty robust with departments that perhaps, if we can identify obviously a clear failure to deliver services to the public.
Going back to the culture point earlier in the conversation, if we have to hold our hands up, we'll hold our hands up as officers. No problem.
I know we're looking at processes, but it's just
Thank you, Chair. Can we go back to Appendix 1? In the table, the complaint stage 3, planning and building control is 2. Can you tell us where that is again, please?
There was a note about it at the bottom.
Yeah.
Bottom of the page.
Oh, sorry. This is because 2 stage 3.
If I may, Chair, the change to the corporate complaints policy came in just after, it wasn't at 1st of April last year, I think it was in June or July, so there were still some stage 3 complaints received a year part of the year.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's good.
Okay.
A couple of questions. I mean, we've talked generally about the high number of complaints in the public spaces. Are these genuinely complaints, or would, for example, somebody phoning up to say some fly tipping in net or net tipping, would that constitute a complaint for this purpose?
The example you've given, somebody reporting flight tip wouldn't count as a complaint. A complaint is a complaint. If the service user starts a conversation and want to make a complaint, it is recorded as a complaint. If they want to report something, then it wouldn't be regarded as a complaint. However, if they reported flight tipping and then they came back in previous and said, I reported this and you haven't done anything, I wish to complain, that would become a complaint.
Do you record compliments in any way? Positive feedback?
We do.
Some of them actually get reported into the council courier. It's very nice for staff to occasionally get their compliments. So we do that. So yes, we do have compliments. Unfortunately, more interested in the complaints.
In fact, what we refer to as a complaints procedure is actually a corporate feedback procedure, a policy that picks up
feedback complaints procedure.
Do we have a problem at all with vexatious complaints?
We do.
Correct. Okay.
I won't expand on that in the detail per se.
Can I then,
Chairman, sorry, I know you're anxious to get to the advice, but can I just say a few words about the Ombudsman letter?
You can, yes. Beyond the complimentary nature of it.
Yes, it is very complimentary. I think one of the frustrations we've had, and as a committee you've had in the past with the Ombudsman letter, is the Ombudsman changes the way of presentation, categorisation of complaints from year to year, and they've done it yet again. So we can't give you any direct comparison with the previous year. But what we can say is that if you look at page 169, the bold or the box, yes, detailed investigations not upheld to upheld 0, upheld rate 0%. So the Ombudsman has found no fault with us for the year 15-16, which I think is
so in true style, Daventry District Council, 2 complainants.
exactly. And in terms of the total numbers of complaints that have gone to the Ombudsman, the numbers are round about what we've seen in previous years. It's generally the high teens. And again, because of the timing between complaints being logged and the actual resolution of complaints, then again we can't compare like numbers. But
Chair, I think Tony may have answered it because we've got 16 complaints received, but 50 decisions have been made. That's the timing.
Yes, the Ombudsman actually takes a window of a year, and what's coming is logged, what goes out is logged. So,
and I think, Chair, in previous years we've had this, and we'd like to complain to them about their changing format every year, which doesn't make it true for us.
In fact, we did complain.
Was it a bell? We've got a brighter looking, tinier table, but still.
So can I take members swiftly back to the advice, and we are happy to endorse the complaints procedures and associated complaint handling.
I wonder we should just minute the complimentary letter from the Ombudsman and add our congratulations as well to
So we've had an unqualified audit and a good letter from the Ombudsman at the same time.
I think actually we should record in the minutes going back to the statement of accounts, so our compliments to the accountancy staff for producing them.
We can amend the back minute, I'm sure, because we did say that I did read out the page 14 report of unqualified audit and the improving working papers, just to make sure audit was looked after at the time. Thank you all, gentlemen and officers. Thank you.